Last week, I spent 32 hours on my phone. That's only one day short of an entire work week. If I spent that much time reading, I could practically be a full-time reader. Now, a lot of that time was for necessary things like being on my calculator or GPS, but I did think it would be a fun challenge this week to try to spend as little time as possible on my phone and replace that time with my favorite hobby, reading. Hey guys, it's Anna. Welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. It's Sunday, day one of swapping my phone time for reading. I thought before we got into my book, I would actually show you guys what my screen time looked like last week. My total screen time was 31 hours and 39 minutes with an average of 4.5 hours per day. My top used app was my calculator app, which feels kind of lame, but it's because I use my calculator for work. Last Sunday, I was on my phone for 4.5 hours, and this is already making me think a little differently about my time because 4.5 hours feels low for screen time, but for some reason, when I think about setting aside 4.5 hours to read, that feels like a big commitment. So I don't know what that's about. Today, I'm gonna be continuing The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. This is a fantasy book about a librarian spy who goes on missions to different dimensions to retrieve books for this mysterious library. I'm about, I think, 75 pages in so far, and I am really enjoying it. I'm a little confused about how the library works in the different dimensions, but I'm excited to pick it back up again today. Hey guys, it's Monday, day 2. I'm gonna be reading for a little over 4 hours today, so I should definitely be able to finish The Invisible Library and start a new book. I'm really excited about all the books I've set aside to potentially read this week, and I'm also curious how many books I'm going to get through because I normally average about 1 book a week. But we're only on day 2 and I'm about to finish one, so I'm excited to see how many I can get through this week. Okay, I finished The Invisible Library. I have a lot of thoughts. I think I'm going to give it a 3.5 stars. I definitely enjoyed it. I was never bored because it was very action-packed. I also really liked the characters. The main character, Irene, felt very real to me, and I also enjoyed the dynamic between her and her apprentice and the detective they teamed up with. The one thing with the characters that I didn't like was the romance in the book. It felt a little cheesy and sometimes cringy to me. Don't get me wrong, I was rooting for them, but it made me a little uncomfortable at certain points. I struggled with the world building a little bit. I felt like the author did have very set rules for how the universe works, but the way they were explained didn't make a lot of sense to me. This is only book 1 in a series though, so the world may get more fleshed out in the later books. Actually, yeah, looking on Goodreads, the first book is rated 3.74, and each book after that keeps on getting higher and higher ratings. Also, I will say it started raining outside and I had my tea and I was reading about a library and characters on a mission to find a book. So this did provide a very cozy rainy day reading session. So 5 out of 5 for the vibes. The next book I'm going to start is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I'm pretty excited for this one because I don't think I've ever read a villain origin story before, and I've heard this one is pretty good. I also really enjoyed The Hunger Games when I was younger, so I have pretty high hopes for this one. Hey guys, it's Tuesday. Yesterday I only ended up reading for under 4 hours because I decided to go out and watch my husband's basketball game instead of staying at home reading. I don't feel bad about that though, because the whole point of this challenge is to spend less time on my phone and more time doing things I find more valuable. And supporting my husband definitely falls under that category. Yesterday, I got about 100 pages into The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I actually had to stop at this point because I'm reading this book with our book club, and we read our books in sections and then meet each week to talk about it. I'm dying to continue this though because our section left off in such a cliffhanger. So as soon as we have our next meeting, I'm gonna be picking this back up ASAP. So today I knew I had to choose a really good book to start, or else I would just keep on thinking about this one. So I am going to start A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. This is the second book in the Wayfarer series, which is kind of a cozy sci-fi that's very character driven. It takes place in the future in the Galactic Commons after humans have abandoned Earth and encountered lots of different species in space. The books are really more about the characters and their relationships with each other and the different species and their histories and how we all now interact together in space. I'm not even a big sci-fi person, but I did think it was fascinating all the different alien species that the author came up with and their histories, their characteristics, their language, their culture. And to that end, it had a lot of interesting discussions about human culture and discrimination too. This second book is about an AI character actually who's in the first book. I'm really excited to read her story. Hello, Coco. Hello. I've never read a book from the perspective of an AI. In the first book in the series, we started to get some discussions surrounding the ethical issues with sentient AI, like what rights they would deserve or how we humans should ethically interact with them and treat them. So I'm sure we're gonna get a lot more of that discussion in this book. Okay, I'm only a few chapters in, but I just had to read you this little excerpt. One cool thing that this author does is she tells parts of the story and gives you information through things like data files, message transmissions, even online forums. So I wanted to read you this little excerpt from the beginner user manual for the AI. You don't sweat and you can't contract diseases, but practicing hygiene habits comparable to those of organic sapiens provides many benefits. For starters, you need to do it to keep up appearances. You will get dirty. Most importantly, you may not be able to get sick, but whatever's on your hand can be passed along to your organic buddies. Ask a friend to teach you about hand washing. Hello, it is now day 4, so we are halfway through the week. I did read for my 4.5 hours yesterday, and you will not believe what my screen time was last Wednesday. It was 58 minutes. I don't know what I was doing last Wednesday, but I was not on my phone. So that's gonna make today pretty easy. Okay, since I didn't have to read that long today and we're halfway through the week, I thought I'd give you guys a few initial reflections on how the challenge is going so far. I think I have already noticed myself reaching for my phone less, and I'm also getting less distracted by my phone since I'm not already on it. Like today, for example, I used a digital calculator at work instead of my phone, so that didn't give me the chance to be tempted to start scrolling when I'm supposed to be working. You may have noticed that I'm doing this challenge with all my screen time, including my utility apps, And I'm doing that because one, it's more of a challenge, and two, even when I'm using my phone for something necessary like making a grocery list, I'm more likely to get distracted than if I was making the grocery list on a piece of paper. A lot of the time I pick up my phone to do one thing and then all of a sudden I'm on Instagram. I'm not only trying to stay off scrolling apps, but I'm also trying to find non-phone alternatives to utility apps to minimize my distractions. Hey friends, how's it going? Today is Thursday and it's going to be a little harder than yesterday because last Thursday I read for 6 hours and 56 minutes. I'm not sure what I was doing. It looks like just an hour here, a half hour there from a bunch of different apps added up. I did read for 2 hours yesterday, which is 1 more hour than I needed to. So I was going to carry over that hour for today, so I only had to read for 6 hours. But when I told my husband that this morning, he said, no, you gotta commit to the challenge. You need to read the full 7 hours. And he gave me a little pep talk. So I guess today I'm going to have to figure out how to read for 7 hours. Luckily, I do get to resume the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes today. I only get to read the next 100 pages because that's our next book club section, but I am so eager to pick back up where we left off because we left off on such a cliffhanger. Also, I'm really enjoying A Closed and Common Orbit. It really picked up and that's why I read for an extra hour yesterday. I'm probably gonna finish this and start a new book today, which is always exciting. I think my books are going to make it easy for me to read 7 hours today. The challenge is going to be finding those 7 hours throughout the day. All right, guys, I am now 200 pages into the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and I finished A Closed and Common Orbit. I've been reading for about 4 hours so far, so I still have 3 hours to go. I am actually so upset that I can't continue reading this. I had to stop at our book club section again. I read The Hunger Games when I was in middle school, and I don't remember a lot of details, but I do remember I absolutely devoured it, and I wish I could do the same with this book. I'm finding Snow as a character very interesting. Right now, he still very much feels like the protagonist and that at his core, he's a good person. But at the same time, he does have these moments of callousness and almost detachment from the cruelty that's being done to others. I'm already just so sad because we know what he becomes and how his story ends, but I still can't help but rooting for him to overcome the darkness and fight back against this cruel society. I also finished A Closed and Common Orbit and really loved it. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't connecting to our AI character Sidra as much as I did in the first book, but I can't really say why because that would be a spoiler. At the end of the book though, her storyline did take off and I ended up enjoying it and getting more invested in her character. What was really a pleasant surprise about this book was the storyline of Pepper, who's the human that takes in Sidra. We get her whole backstory and I was so intrigued by all her chapters. She's considered an enhanced, which means she was genetically created to work in this factory and she was enslaved there growing up. But she ends up escaping and has to discover the world and how to survive in it for the first time. When she escaped, she literally didn't even know what the sky was. She looked up and was like, what is this big, far away blue ceiling? So watching her learn about society from scratch was really fascinating. And I also thought it was really cool how Pepper's storyline ended up connecting with Sidra's in the end. I think I'm gonna give this book a solid 4 stars. All right, we still have 3 hours of reading left to go today, so I got myself some decaf chai tea and we are going to start the next book. I decided to read The Invention of Wings by Sue Monk Kidd. This is a historical fiction book set in South Carolina during the 19th century. We're kind of going all over the place with genres this week. I started off with fantasy and then dystopian and sci-fi, and now we're going historical fiction. I'm really excited about this one because I've been wanting to read a Sue Monk Kidd book for a while. She also wrote The Invisible Life of Bees and The Book of Longings, which are both on my TBR. But I happened to see this one at the library last week, so I picked it up. Hey guys, it's the next day and I did it. I read for 7 hours yesterday. I kept the time on my watch so I could show you. Oh, it's gonna be upside down. We have another longer day today. Last Friday, I was on my phone for 5.5 hours. I'm going to do what I did yesterday and read in a lot of little chunks throughout the day. I'm a little over 100 pages into The Invention of Wings. I thought I was gonna fly through this book because it doesn't look that big, but it's been really dense both in subject matter and physically. Like, the text is small, the margins are small, and it has really thin pages. So this is going to take me longer to read than I thought. I've not been disappointed by Sue Monk Kidd's writing though. I think the story's been beautifully written so far. She can paint a picture without being too descriptive, and she uses just the right amount of lyrical writing for me. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily enjoying the book so far because it's obviously dealing with difficult topics like slavery and women's oppression, but I think it's gonna be a really powerful story and I'm definitely invested. Hey guys, it's day 7. We've made it. It's the last day of swapping my screen time for reading. I'm not going to lie, this challenge has been pretty difficult, but even though I've felt just as busy as normal, maybe even more so trying to fit in all this reading time, when I go to bed at the end of the day, I haven't felt bad about wasted time a single day this week. I felt happy with what I accomplished each day, both in general and in reading. I always consider reading time well spent, but when I spend a chunk of time on my phone, I don't always feel that way. For this last day in the challenge, I have 5 hours of reading time, and I actually already read for an hour this morning and finished The Invention of Wings. I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. It was an incredibly powerful and inspirational story. It made me want to take action in my own community and be an activist for the issues that I believe in, which is really cool. I thought the writing was superb and the characters were really well fleshed out. The only reason I'm not giving it 5 stars is it was a little slow in the middle, and I also really wish we got more of the relationship between Sarah and Handful. We got both of their individual stories in depth, but I think the relationship with each other could have been expanded upon a lot more. But I still thought it was a very high quality book, and I would definitely recommend this one. Okay, I still have 4 hours of reading for the day though, so I collected a few short books from my bookcase that I thought I could finish in just a few hours because it would just be sad to end this challenge in the middle of a book. I have To Be Taught If Fortunate, which is a novella in the Wayfarer series, the sci-fi series I was reading earlier this week. We have Number the Stars, which is a World War II historical fiction written by Lois Lowry, the author of The Giver. And then I have Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, which is a classic of African literature. I think I'm gonna go with Things Fall Apart. This is a classic, or is it a modern classic? It was published in 1959, so I'm not sure what that makes it. But Chinua Achebe is kind of considered the father of modern African literature. I've been meaning to read this for a while to widen my scope, but it's hard to find the motivation to read classics sometimes. But just having finished The Invention of Wings, I'm feeling inspired to learn more about African culture, so I think I'm gonna take advantage of that inspiration and finally pick this one up. Alright guys, we did it. I successfully swapped my screen time with reading for a whole week. I actually read for a little over 5 hours today so I could finish Things Fall Apart. I think I'm gonna wait until my August wrap up to give you guys my review on this one because I need some time to let it settle, get my thoughts together. It was a heavier book. Here are my reading stats for the week. I got through 4 books and halfway through a 5th one, which is incredible. This is way more than I typically read in a week. And we had a really good mix of genres. I went from fantasy to sci-fi to dystopian to historical fiction and even a classic. My screen time was definitely lower this week. I will put up the screenshots so you can see the final time. So did this challenge change my life? Did it alter my mood or productivity? I think it definitely helped me form some habits that I want to stick with, like getting in the mindset that it's not an option to pick up my phone to scroll when I want a quick break at work or in the evening when I want to relax. I also realized that I have more time throughout the day if I'm just more careful with it, and I tend to get less distracted if I'm using my phone for less things. I would definitely recommend this challenge if you're trying to spend less time on your phone or you're trying to read more or both. Let me know in the comments if you think you'd ever do this or if you've read any of the books I read this week. I would love to hear your thoughts on those. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in my next video.